I was on my third street when I realized the house I'd been logging had different cars in the driveway every night for a week. My name is Cal, I'm 34. I do it support from home for a logistics company, which means I keep odd hours and I'm around all day. When my neighbor Donna, she was maybe 60, had lived in the subdivision since it was built, asked me to join the neighborhood watch, I said yes mostly because I felt guilty for not knowing anyone's name yet. We lived in Sycamore Ridge. It sounds like a perfume, but it's a subdivision tucked off Route 32 in central Maryland, about 40 minutes outside of Baltimore. Cul-de-sacs, vinyl fencing, an HOA newsletter on the first of every month reminding you about grass height and holiday lighting ordinances, that kind of place. The watch had been running for 2 years. It started after someone pried the door off a storage unit on Clover Lane and took 3 bikes and a generator. Small stuff, but it spooked enough people that the HOA set up the program. Donna ran the orientation. She handed me a laminated route card in a plastic sleeve, a yellow reflective vest, a flashlight the size of my forearm, and a cheap walkie-talkie that crackled every time someone keyed up from more than 2 blocks away. Shifts were Tuesday and Thursday, 9 to 11. You walked the route, logged anything off, unfamiliar vehicle, open garage, lights where there shouldn't be any. You initialed your sheet and dropped it in a binder at the coordinator's house at the end of every shift. The coordinator was a man named Gerald, mid-50s, retired from something in logistics, lived on the main loop. He ran the program with the seriousness of a man who had been waiting his whole life for a role exactly like this. My usual partner was a guy named Terrence. We'd done maybe 6 or 7 shifts together by then, easy company. He'd narrate the houses like a realtor doing a dark tour. That one had a drainage issue, that one's deck never got permitted. Years of neighborhood knowledge just pouring out of him. Terrence didn't show the night things started going wrong. He texted me something came up with his daughter. Fine, I'd done solo shifts before. I signed out the spare flashlight, pulled on the vest, and started the route at 9 on the dot. The route card had 18 stops, specific driveways to check, a few corner houses flagged for lighting issues, one cul-de-sac that backed up to a walking trail and had been broken into twice. House 11 on the card was a beige colonial on Ashford Circle. I'd logged it before. Same Accord in the driveway, lights off by 10 most nights, quiet place. That night there was a black Dodge Ram parked where the Accord usually sat, brand new plate or close to it. I noted both. Thursday I came back, the Ram was gone, an older Jeep Cherokee sat in its place, no Accord anywhere. I checked my log from Tuesday, the Accord hadn't been there then either. I mentioned it to Gerald at drop-off. He nodded, made a note, said it was probably a family visit situation. I let it go. Then the following Tuesday, a white cargo van. I started paying closer attention. The house looked the same from the outside, blinds always angled the same way, no movement, mail sitting in the box for 3 days until it vanished all at once. I asked Donna if she knew who lived there. She thought for a second, said she thought a couple had bought it the previous spring, kept to themselves. Moved in quietly, no rental truck, just a few carloads over a weekend. That detail caught on something, I didn't know why yet. The next shift I walked a little slower past Ashford Circle. The house was on my card, I was just looking. There was a light on in the back, just a sliver under a door visible through the side yard. Garage down, no car in the driveway at all. I logged it, time, date, description, initialed. When I dropped my sheet at Gerald's, I noticed the binder was thinner than usual. I flipped back a few pages. My last 2 logs were missing, not misplaced. The pages before and after were there. Mine weren't. I told Gerald. He said the binder had been reorganized. He said it mildly. He didn't look at me when he said it. I drove home and typed out my last 3 logs from memory, saved them to my desktop. Thursday I was back with Terrence. I told him about the house on Ashford. He went quiet for a second too long. Then he said, "Yeah, I've noticed that one too." I asked if he'd logged it. He said he thought he had, but he wasn't sure it made it into the binder. We finished the route without saying much else. The next day Gerald called. He asked which streets I'd covered on Tuesday's solo shift. I told him the exact route from the laminated card. He said good. Then he asked if I'd gone down Ashford twice. I hadn't, I'd passed it once in the normal sequence. I told him that. He said someone had reported seeing a watch volunteer in front of the beige colonial around 10:15. He just wanted to confirm it wasn't me so he could sort it out. I said it wasn't me. He said good, hung up. I sat in my kitchen for a while after that. A watch volunteer in a yellow vest had been standing in front of that house at 10:15. By 10:15, I was on the other side of the subdivision. That meant someone else was out there in a vest, on a night when I was the only one signed out. I pulled up the program roster. Gerald had given me a printed copy when I joined. I went through every name. 22 volunteers listed. I knew most of them by sight. 3 names meant nothing to me. One of them, a man listed as Paul Garrett on Birchwood Drive, I had never seen at a single shift meeting or drop-off. Not once. I didn't even know which house on Birchwood was supposed to be his. I walked Birchwood the next morning. No vest, just walking. 11 houses on the street. None of them had a mailbox or address plate with the name Garrett. I drove to the county property search office, went through the parcel list for our subdivision. No Garrett anywhere in the records. Paul Garrett did not live in Sycamore Ridge. I sat in my car in the parking lot of a giant grocery store off Route 32 and thought about what that meant. Someone had added a name to the volunteer roster, a name attached to no address, no face, no shift history. A name that gave someone access to vest sign-out, to the log binder, to the shift schedule showing which streets were covered on which nights and by whom. And someone in that vest had been standing in front of a house I'd been watching, a house with different cars every few days, no consistent residents, a light in the back that stayed on all night. I thought about the missing logs. I thought about Gerald asking which streets I'd walked. I thought about the way he'd asked, not surprised, not annoyed, careful. I did not go back to Gerald. I printed out my last 2 weeks of reconstructed logs, stapled them with a cover note, and drove them to the county sheriff's substation on Patuxent Road. I talked to a deputy for about 20 minutes. He was polite. He took the paperwork. He didn't tell me much. I finished out my scheduled Thursday shift because I didn't want anything to change before the right people had a chance to look. I walked the full route. I logged Ashford Circle green Subaru in the driveway this time, same sliver of light under the back door. I dropped my sheet in Gerald's binder at 10:58 and drove straight home. That night I sent Donna a message saying I was stepping back from the program. Vague reason about work hours. She replied with a sad face emoji and said she understood. That weekend I installed 2 new cameras on my porch, wide angle, motion activated, the kind that saves to a cloud account I set up with an email address Gerald had never seen. 7 weeks later, Donna knocked on my door. She had that look people get when they're trying to tell you something carefully. She said Gerald had stepped down from coordinating. She said there'd been an issue. 2 people had been arrested in connection with a burglary pattern that stretched across 4 subdivisions in the county. She didn't say what program they'd used to run it. She didn't have to. One of the arrests was a man whose name I didn't recognize. The other, and Donna paused here, was someone who'd been on the watch roster. She said the sheriff's office had been watching them for a few weeks before they moved. She asked if I knew anything about it. I said I'd filed some paperwork a while back. She looked at me for a moment, then she nodded slowly. We haven't talked about it since. The program restarted about 4 months later under new oversight. A few of the original volunteers went back. Terrence went back. He texted me to ask if I wanted to rejoin. I told him I was glad it was running again. I left it at that. I still walk the neighborhood at night. My dog needs the exercise. I know most of the houses now. I know which ones have the porch lights on timers and which ones are actually home. I just don't wear the vest anymore. I was 4 miles in when I noticed the man had no pack. Not a small pack, not a hydration vest, not a waist belt, nothing at all. He was walking with his hands loose at his sides, wearing a flannel shirt in 60-degree weather, like he'd just stepped off a front porch. Let me back up. It was a Saturday in October, western North Carolina, up near the Nantahala National Forest. There's a trail off Forest Road 67 that I'd done twice before. Not a famous trail, doesn't show up on any top 10 list. About 7 miles round trip, a creek crossing at the 2-mile mark, and a rocky overlook at the end where you can see 3 ridges stacking up behind each other. One of the better, quiet days you can have outdoors. I went alone because my usual hiking partner, a guy named Derek, had a family thing that weekend. Before I lost signal, I texted him my trailhead and my expected return time. My truck, a '99 Tacoma dark green, was the only vehicle in the dirt lot when I started. Just a gravel pull-off, big enough for maybe 6 cars, marked by a brown wooden post with a faded trail blaze nailed to it. A rusted chain hangs between 2 posts at the entrance. It was down when I arrived, lying in the mud. The first couple of hours were everything I needed. The leaves were at full color. The trail followed the creek for a while, and the water was running loud, higher than I'd seen it before, probably from rain earlier that week. I stopped at the crossing around noon, ate half a sandwich, watched a kingfisher work the shallows. I wasn't thinking about anything heavy. I was just there. I started noticing the man around the 2.5 mile mark. He was behind me, maybe 100 yards back, moving at the same pace I was. I didn't think much of it. People start hikes at different times. Lots of locals use these trails without making a production of it. I kept walking. The next time I glanced back, he was closer, 70 yards maybe. That's when I noticed the no-pack thing. Still not alarmed. Some people do short out-end backs, some people just walk. I picked up my pace and focused on the trail ahead. Then I came around a long switchback, maybe 10 minutes of walking, and he was there, ahead of me, standing just off the trail to the left, looking down at something in the leaf litter. I slowed. There was no way to pass him without coming within a few feet. The trail was narrow there, a drop-off on the right. I said, "Hey." He looked up. He was older, mid-50s maybe, gray hair, heavy build, no expression I could read. His flannel was dark green, the kind of pattern that dissolves into forest if you're not looking directly at it. No water bottle, no sunglasses pushed up on his head, nothing on a belt loop. His hands were just open at his sides. "You by yourself?" he asked. I said I was meeting friends up at the Overlook. It came out automatically. I don't know why I lied. Something about the question felt like a test. He nodded slowly. "How many friends?" I said a few, kept walking. He fell in behind me. For the next 10 minutes I didn't look back, but I could hear him. His footfall was quiet for a big man, almost careful. Not the clumsy weight shifting you get from someone out for a casual walk. It was deliberate, placed, and he wasn't breathing hard, which on that grade was something you'd notice. I was working a little, and I'm in decent shape. The trail through that section is steady climbing, and the leaf cover made the footing soft and unpredictable. He moved over it like he knew it. The air had gotten colder in the last half mile, just enough that I noticed the sweat on the back of my neck for the first time and felt it go cold and uncomfortable. The trees had thinned out. No creek noise up here, no wind to speak of, just my footsteps and behind me his. I stopped at a small trail marker and pretended to check my phone. He stopped too, 20 feet back, just standing there, hands at his sides, watching me. "You parked at the 67 lot," he said. My stomach dropped. "That's a specific lot. There are 2 others you can use for this trail, one off a Forest Service road to the east, one at a picnic area about a mile west." He said it like he'd already checked, like he'd seen my truck specifically, and was now confirming what he already knew. I told him I wasn't sure which lot my friends used, kept my voice even. He smiled at that, not warm, just a movement of his mouth. I started walking again, faster. The trail opened up through a burned section, old fire damage, maybe 3 or 4 years back, standing dead trees, pale and stripped, brush growing low and thick at their bases, more visibility up here, maybe a quarter mile in both directions. No one else around. I couldn't hear him anymore. I told myself he'd turned back. I almost believed it. The Overlook was half a mile ahead. My plan was to get there, sit in the open, and wait for a trail runner or a group to come through, then walk out with them. And then I saw the second man. He was off trail, maybe 40 yards to my right, moving through the trees, not on any use trail I could see, just moving through the forest parallel to me, going the same direction I was going, picking his way through the brush without difficulty, not fighting it, not crashing through it, moving like someone who had done it before in that specific place. Younger than the first, lighter build, also no pack. I stopped walking completely. 2 of them, no gear, moving toward the same endpoint. That's when I felt it, not fear exactly, something more fundamental. My hands went cold. My mouth went dry in an instant, that particular dryness that has nothing to do with thirst. Everything got very clear and very quiet, not calm, more like the moment before something loud. I was aware of exactly how far I was from the trailhead, aware of exactly how much trail lay between me and my truck. I turned around and walked back the way I came. Not jogging, I didn't want to show that I'd made a decision. I kept my stride even, my shoulders relaxed. I looked at the trail ahead of me the way you look at something that isn't bothering you. The first man was on the trail behind me, closer than I expected, maybe 30 feet. He looked at me, I looked at him. And he said very calmly, "Overlook's that way." That was the sentence, that's the one I still hear. Not threatening, just a correction. He said it like he knew exactly where I was supposed to go and was reminding me, patient, almost helpful, like someone who had said a version of that sentence before and knew what usually came next. I ran. Not sprinting but close, I know that trail. I knew where it widened, where the footing was solid, where I could open my stride. I went back down the switchbacks hard, through the burned section, back into the trees, back into the shade. My breathing was loud in my ears, leaves slapping at my shins. I didn't hear him following. At the creek crossing, I hit a piece of luck. A woman was running the trail toward me, earbuds in, doing an out and back like trail runners do on weekends. I waved her down, pulled one of her earbuds out, and told her there were 2 men on the trail who were bothering me, and I needed to walk out with her. She didn't ask questions. She just turned around and ran beside me all the way to the trailhead. My Tacoma was still there. One other vehicle had joined it. A white Ford Bronco, older model, no plates on the back. I didn't look at it long. I got in, locked the doors, and drove straight to the ranger station on Route 74. The ranger who took my report had been working that district for 11 years. She wrote everything down. She didn't dismiss anything I said. At the end, she told me they'd had other reports from that section of trail over the last several months. She didn't elaborate. She asked me to send her the photo I'd taken of the Bronco. I'd gotten a shot through my window before I pulled out, almost without thinking. Just lifted my phone and clicked. 6 months later, I was talking to Derek, and I finally told him everything. He pulled up a news article on his phone and slid it across the table without saying a word. A man had been detained in that county for approaching solo hikers over a period of about 8 months. Multiple incidents. He was identified partly through a vehicle description. I don't know if it was the same person. I genuinely don't. I still hike. I went back to North Carolina in the spring, different trail, different county, with Derek this time. But I text my route to 3 people now before I lose signal, not just one. And when someone on the trail has no pack and no water and wants to know where my car is parked, I'm already gone. On the 3rd hostel in 3 different cities, his bag was still under the same bunk number. My name is Joel. I was 24, 1 month out of college, and I'd been planning this trip since spring. Flagstaff to Sedona to Moab, then looping back through Page and Kanab. 6 weeks through the American Southwest. I had a budget, a pack, and a printed itinerary I'd folded into my passport holder. I thought I was doing everything right. The itinerary was 2 pages, printed double-sided on copy paper. Hostel names, check-in times, confirmation numbers, a rough daily plan for each stop. I'd laminated it in a strip of packing tape to keep it from falling apart. It was thorough. It was specific. That specificity mattered later. I left Flagstaff feeling good. First hostel was fine, $12 a night, a top bunk near the window, people my age passing through. I slept well. On my second morning, I ate at a Denny's on Route 66 and didn't think anything of it. That was where I first saw him. He was sitting 2 booths over, medium build, mid-30s maybe, a gray zip-up jacket with no logo, nothing. A large hiking pack propped beside him, olive green, no brand patches, no keychains, nothing that told you anything about him. He had no phone out, no book. He was just watching the parking lot through the window like he was waiting for someone to pull in. I finished my eggs and left. Southwest Diner, plenty of solo travelers. I didn't think about it again. The Sedona hostel was a 6-bunk room off State Route 179. Low adobe building, gravel lot, hand-painted sign. I checked in, got assigned bunk 3, dropped my stuff, and spent most of the day out on the red rocks. The light on the formations in the late afternoon was extraordinary. It was exactly what I'd come for. That evening I came back to the room and he was there. Gray zip-up, olive pack under the bunk on the opposite wall. He nodded at me when I walked in. I nodded back. I told myself, Sedona is an obvious stop on this route. People overlap. The next morning there was a free walking tour. I signed up at the front desk and was waiting outside at 9 when he walked out and joined the back of the group. Same jacket, sunglasses. He stood behind me the whole tour, not next to me. Behind me, not so close it seemed strange, just close enough that I noticed. Near the end, at a viewpoint over Cathedral Rock, he stepped up beside me. He said, "You going up to Moab next?" I told him I was thinking about it, casual, non-committal. I didn't say yes. He nodded and walked off. That night I checked my locker. I use a small black combination lock, 4 digits, the same one I'd had since freshman year. It was locked, but when I opened it, my MacBook was on the wrong side of the shelf. I keep it on the left. It was on the right. My cash was still there. My passport was still there, but something had moved them. And the fold of packing tape on my itinerary was creased the wrong direction, like someone had opened it and refolded it in a hurry. I stood in the hallway for a long time. The fluorescent light above me buzzed at a low, uneven frequency. I tried to think through explanations. Maybe I'd been tired. Maybe I'd just set things down differently. I almost convinced myself. Almost. I had to push on to Moab. I had a rental car due back in Salt Lake City in 11 days. I had my friend Marcus flying in to meet me 3 days after Moab. I couldn't burn the bookings without losing real money. I was locked in. I booked the Coyote Hostel, 8-bunk dorm, $22 a night. I got to Moab on a Tuesday afternoon. The heat was dense and flat, coming off the pavement in waves, making the air taste faintly metallic. I'd driven US 191 down from the junction with the windows open because the rental's air conditioning had started making a grinding noise somewhere around Monticello. I pulled into the Coyote's lot with grit on my arms and a headache behind my eyes. I checked in, walked down the hall to room 4. His olive pack was under bunk 3. I stopped in the doorway. I didn't go in. I stood there with my hand on the doorframe and looked at that pack, same frame, same faded color, same total absence of any identifying marks, and everything in my chest went very quiet and very cold. I went to the front desk, asked the woman there, young, tired-looking, name tag that said Bree, if she could tell me how another guest had ended up in my assigned room. She said room assignments were automatic. She said they didn't share guest information. She looked back at her screen. I asked if she could move me to a different room. She said the hostel was full. I went back down the hall and put my pack on bunk 4. He came in around 6, set a water bottle on his nightstand, sat on his bunk, opened a paperback. Normal, completely normal. 2 other guys were in the room by then, German backpackers, friendly, loud. I talked to them and tried to keep my breathing even. One of the Germans asked the man in the gray zip-up where he was from. He said here and there. That was all. He went back to his book. Later I was in the kitchen making pasta. Small room, 2 burners, a scratched cutting board, a fridge covered in stickers from a dozen different countries. The overhead light hummed the way bad fluorescents do. He walked in and opened the refrigerator. He stood there with the door open, back to me, cold air spilling out. He said without turning around, "You have a printed itinerary, right? Not just your phone." I turned around. He was still looking into the refrigerator. His voice was completely level. "Most people just use their phone now," he said. "Safer that way." He took out a water bottle and left. I stood at the stove with the wooden spoon in my hand and the pasta boiling over, and I understood fully, completely, what was happening. He knew I had a printed itinerary. He knew because he'd been in my locker. He'd read it. He knew every city on my route, the order, the dates. He'd known before Moab. He'd known before Sedona. The question at the viewpoint, "You going to Moab?" hadn't been small talk. It had been a confirmation check. He already knew where I was going. He just wanted to see if I'd say it. He'd been ahead of me at every stop, or alongside me. I didn't know which was worse. I ate the pasta standing at the counter. I didn't taste it. I didn't go back to the room. Around 9 I went back in, waited until the Germans were there, awake, talking. I watched him from my bunk. He had his pack open on the floor, reorganizing something. I could see inside for about 4 seconds before he zipped it. A length of nylon rope, coiled neat. The kind you'd use for hanging a bare bag, or the kind you'd tell yourself was for that if you were trying to explain it away. And a folded piece of paper. Even from across the room I could make out the font, the header layout. It looked exactly like my itinerary. I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark and listened to the swamp cooler on the wall cycling on and off and the occasional truck out on 191. I looked at the whole shape of it without flinching. That took until about 2 in the morning. Then I got up quietly, took my pack, walked out to the hallway, and sat down against the wall with my phone. I opened Hostel World and canceled every remaining booking. I ate the cancellation fees. $80 some gone. I rebooked everything under my middle name with a different email address, different cities, different dates. Salt Lake City first early. I skipped 2 stops entirely. Then I opened my messages and texted Marcus. I sent him a photo I'd taken on the Sedona walking tour, the gray zip-up visible in the background, face clear. I typed, "This guy has been at every hostel on my route. He's been in my locker. If you don't hear from me in 24 hours, call the police in Moab, Utah, and show them this." Marcus replied in 6 minutes. "I'm calling right now." I told him to wait. I had a plan. At 4:50 in the morning, I walked to the Moab bus terminal on 100 West. The sky was still full dark. The temperature had dropped and my arms were cold and the streets were completely empty. My footsteps on the sidewalk sounded too loud. I bought a cash ticket on the 5:15 Greyhound north toward Price. I sat in the last row with my pack between my feet and watched every person who boarded. Nobody got on wearing a gray zip-up. I changed buses in Price, got to Salt Lake City a day early, returned the rental at the Enterprise on 400 South, $600 in early return fees that I didn't argue about, checked into a private room at a hotel, not a hostel, slept for 14 hours. Marcus flew in and we drove the rest of the trip together in his cousin's Tacoma. No hostel world, last-minute motels, cash when we could manage it. I never saw the man in the gray zip-up again. 3 months after I got home, I was in a Facebook group for Southwest backpackers. Someone posted a news story. A solo traveler, 26 years old, British guy on a gap year, had gone missing somewhere in the canyon country outside of Moab, last seen at a hostel. His pack was found near a trailhead. He never checked in for his next booking. No suspect photo, no arrests, still listed as an open case. I don't know if it's connected. I have no way to know. What I know is that someone read my itinerary out of my locker. Someone booked the same rooms in the same cities in the right order. Someone asked me about that piece of paper in a way that told me he already knew the answer. And I know I made the 5:15 bus.